Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a video covering several new pads I've received, and a lot of them I really enjoy. In fact, each and every single pad in this video that will be discussed is a pad that I think is high quality, has a nice textile to it that feels very good in game, and just cushioning and just overall quality that is something that resonated with me during my testing. I've got the last stand from Tenta X. You guys can see the pad is quite different than what a lot of people are putting out nowadays, which are more of the anime girl sense of marketing. The Digolo pad, I will talk about this though. I think this is actually an anime design with a female figure that is more anime feeling and less sexualized, like what we are seeing from Yuki Aim. Now, the Tenta X is a black and white design. It's a jacquard fabric, and the textile itself reminds me a lot of the first war from Padsmith. Anybody that's been following me for a long time knows I really enjoyed that particular surface. Kind of reminds me a bit of the Equate V2. The difference from just going off memory between this and the first war, it does feel a little bit smoother, but it's a very noticeable hybrid surface that does have a little bit of a harder feel than a softer fabric like the Digolo pad. Now, this is something that with default skates here on the Nifter, which, we'll talk about these skates first because the default PTFE is going to feel probably most similar to what other people have on hand. I will be talking about these new skates, though, from X-Ray Pad as well. These are the Obsidian Airs and Obsidian Air Pros. But in terms of the speed of this pad, they actually advertise that initial friction is on the high side. I don't really think so. I think initial friction is more so balanced. And I think dynamic friction, you get a lot of the similar feel to what you get out of the Padsmith First War. It's a nice hybrid surface that has, I would say, a balance leaning towards speed, slightly leaning towards speed surface. The glide is actually really nice. It's not, again, very fast. It's something that I think is more so closer to being down the middle. So you're getting a nice pad that has a nice amount of cush. It's something that you can dig into with a little bit of force, but I don't think you would find yourself accidentally digging into this. The base is actually quite nice. It's something that kind of mirrors Poron. The surface is slightly over the stitching itself. But, I mean, pads are just getting so good now from these factories. There's just not a lot to hate on the pad itself. Performance was phenomenal. Again, it's more so down on the balance side, something that I really enjoy, like the Padsmith First War. You can see just on glide with default PTFE here on the Nifter, it does have a good amount of stopping force. But really in game, I think what you'll find is dynamic, like when you actually get the mouse moving, it just feels nice and open. There's no tug going side to side, or when you start getting down to the static friction, I don't find there to be like a magnetized tug feeling like on some control pads. And overall, the static friction, it does feel rather controlled. So if you want to use this thing in tack shooters, I don't think you'd have a problem. But I do find the mouse to be very easy on the uptake in terms of its overall speed when you want to get this thing moving. Moving to the next pad, I do have the Digolo Ban. That's B4N. And the Ban is something that does have more cushioning than the Tenta X pad, the last stand. The cushioning here is actually very comfortable. I mean, this pad is going to be a pad that's actually kind of hard to take off my desk. I think the surface itself, it feels more on the speedy side. It feels kind of like a faster Saturn in terms of the texture of the pad. But overall, the cushioning here, again, it takes a little bit to dig into. The rebound is very fast. So I actually really enjoy the cushioning that they're using here. You can see the back of the pad does have that ban kind of dug into or kind of printed into the backing of the pad. But just a very comfortable, speedy pad that is lighter on initial friction than the last stand. So it's a little bit easier to get the mouse moving than the last stand. Static friction is lower than the last stand. So again, it's going to feel a little bit faster. Again, the glide on the pad just feels effortless. but it doesn't feel anything that is overly fast. You can see the glide just with default skates. It does come to a nice and complete stop. It's like showing you guys the glide of the mouse. It really doesn't do the description of the pad justice. It's a nice, open, speedy pad that will feel probably 3 ticks faster than a standard Saturn Pro. And just cushioning that with 6 millimeters and something that feels very plush. It's just so comfortable on the hand. And again, the speed is just something that is really resonating with me. It's something that feels more controlled than a lot of glass pads, but again, something that does feel quite a bit faster than a standardized Saturn Pro. So I really do enjoy this pad, and the colors in the design really pop. So the color in the hair, the eyes, and on the backside of the pad, kind of looking like that blood or paint splash there in the background. It really is quite accented in comparison to the whites and blacks of the female figurine at the front. I think it's just a design that really pops and something that looks really cool on my desk with my setup right now. So I think D-Glow's actually done a really nice job with this pad. And honestly, at the end of this video, this is probably the pad that's going to stay on my desk for a while, just because I'm really enjoying the comfort of it while not affecting my in-game mouse speed. And it's just a nice and open pad on glide. It feels really, really good. And just to kind of discuss the Obsidian Airs and Air Pros, the Airs are the purple ones, the Pros are the gray. I really wish there was like more of an in-between of these two skates. I think they're very opposite of one another, which is great, but really they should have been labeled speed and control. The gray is a dot that really does feel exceptionally slower than the purples. The purples just are so open and light on glide, on cloth and glass. I mean, you can see how like effortless that glide is, and that's because the skates are really cutting down not only on initial friction, but dynamic friction as well. So it really like turns every cloth pad I have into a few ticks speedier. And personally speaking, I don't think that benefits me in any way, shape, or form. I think it's just too fast, and the stopping power gets cut down a little bit too much. So I'm not really a fan of the purples. And then the grays, I actually like the grays a lot on glass. It provides a little bit more control, and I'll get to that when we get to the glass pads. But on cloth, it almost feels too sticky. So I'm not really too big of a fan of these new skates, although I do think they're very high quality. Just keep in mind, if you need dots that are more controlled, definitely look at the Pros. If you want dots that are like insanely stupid fast, you can look at the purples. The next pad that I have is the Blitz from the Whale. I've already covered the Blitz in the past. This is a pad that anybody could probably main. This pad, it's just very nicely done. This is on the mid side, so the cushioning is a little bit firmer. But the speed here it's just a nice open pad that has a really nice balance to it. To me, it doesn't feel quite as fast as the D-Glow pad, or more of that like sensation of openness. But it's definitely something that feels a little bit faster to me than the Last Stand. Dynamic friction is just open, effortless. The weave is really tight and professionally done on the actual surface itself. And static friction definitely feels more open to me than the Last Stand. So it's kind of like an in-between, I feel, of the Ban as well as the Last Stand. But just the speed here mixed with its overall stopping power, it really is a nice pad and something that I would probably pick over a Raiden Soft Mid or X Soft. To me, it's just more of a pad that feels like it has more properties for what I look for competitive gaming, in terms of having that nice open feel, but then having a balance on stopping power. So again, very nicely done. And it does feel like it has more durability than the fabric utilized on the Raiden. So if you're looking for a good Raiden alternative, I kind of put this in that speed camp if you like the soft or the X Soft. But to me, I just, like right now, I think I'd rather pick up the Blitz than the Raiden, just because of its overall durability, and just a very nice professionally done pad from the Whale. Love or hate the guy makes good mouse pads. The backing of the pad is exceptionally good. It just doesn't move on my desk at all. And when we get to the Pelz, this is the new version. You can see it comes in now a lighter gray color. Big size if you like bigger pads. But this is a harder, kind of hybrid feeling fabric like the Last Stand. The weave does feel a little bit more abrasive, less smooth than something like the Last Stand. But in terms of its overall speed propensity, I kind of put this in the balanced camp. I don't think this is something that would be defined as speedy and or controlled. But if I had to say, this is something that if you're playing slower games with crosshair placement, kind of like your tack shooters, it does have a nice level of control to it, but your movements still feel open. Again, the Pelz, it's the same thing I said in my original Pelz review. It just doesn't ever strike me as something that is like that magnetized control feeling on static movements. It still feels nice and open. So, being able to whip your mouse around with wrist movements or get your mouse moving with arm aim, it really does feel like a nice pad for both tack shooters and your track heavy games. It's just going to feel a little bit slower than something like the Blitz and a little bit faster than something like the original Riz. So to me, it's just, again, it's a very nice professionally done pad from the Whale. Again, depending on your speed preferences, this falls in the middle of the Riz and the Blitz. So he's got three very distinctively good pads, three distinctive speeds, something that I've enjoyed using and performed very well on. You just have to kind of pick your preference and your color. Now, getting to glass pads have two very distinct properties nowadays. One is going to feel fast and smooth on the skin, free to move with your skin as you're gliding across the pad, or it's going to feel more controlled and your skin will stick to it a little bit more. The Wraith Cosmic V2 is a glass surface that in and of itself feels very smooth, but the glass feels a little bit more catchy. It feels slower for default PTFE skates and just slower in general than pads like the Akari, the Polarity, the Konami pad on my right. So if you're looking for a glass pad that still maintains a little bit of a reduction in speed, this is one of the only ones on the market that does feel a little bit more on the controlled side. When you pair that with the Obsidian Era Pros, it really does provide a super nice experience because the skates do have a really nice glide on glass. You can hear that audible reduction in the overall noise of the skates on the pad when you're gliding, except when you kind of pick up a piece of dust or whatever. But the extra control that the gray skates provide on glass, it just feels like a little reduction in dynamic initial and static, giving you a little additional control on glass. And you can see the difference between the glide of just default PTFE and then the gray skates. And in comparison to the purple Obsidian Airs, it just, like, the purple just turns the pad into a ice hockey table. I mean, it just looks like a puck gliding across the glass when you really push it in motion. I don't like that. I don't like the skates making all pads just like lose their innate propensities, like just the feeling of the speed or texture of a pad. I buy different pads to have a distinct different feeling with the pads, and the purple skates just make every pad feel too similar to one another. The gray skates, though, I do think are a nice complement to a lot of glass pads if you want that reduction in speed. But overall, the Wraith, it definitely has a cool design to it if you like the grays and blacks and lighter grays, if you like the female figure there with her little pistol. Overall, I think they've done a nice job in providing something that's different than other glass pads on the market. And there are improvements from the V1 with now rounded edges. I do wish, though, that the backing of the pad was a little bit different. I don't like that the pad just has a few stoppers on the back. I wish the whole backing was kind of, even just a thin rubber just to keep it stuck on the pad, but also to protect the design itself that's glued on the back of the pad. Like Sky pads back in the day with their designs on the 3.0, it is something that, if you're moving around pads a lot, the backing, the design itself can get a little bit damaged. So just keep that in mind, just be kind of careful with the actual pad as you are moving it on or off your desk. But overall, I do think that this is distinctive enough from other glass pads to recommend. And again, if you want a little bit of a slower, more controlled experience on glass, this is definitely something to check out. Okay, and last but not least, we have the Konami. First and foremost, the design is, I think, one of the better designs on glass pads today. It is from a artist that they have attributed it to on their Twitter. You guys can check him out. But overall, I love the cracked glass design. There are only going to be 1,000 of these units, though, so they're going to sell fast, whether or not you guys are even able to get one. When we have limited drops like that is always a problem. But in terms of the design itself, I love the signature of the artist here on the left, Konami on the right, and not overly noticeable compared to the overall design of the pad itself. Again, a female figure here, but not sexualized. We've got the cracked glass effect, the pinks, the blues, and this transition of color here with the cracked glass effect that just looks really good. It's something that really pops on your desk. The blues, the pinks, everything shines through very nicely in person. I do think that the design itself doesn't quite pop as much through as we saw on the modified glass on the Kazemi. But overall, everything looks absolutely stunning and beautiful. One of the first things about glass is its ability to catch on your skin and in moments of high humidity, etc. My skin personally does not really catch on the Konami pad. I think this is one that works quite well with your skin in general. And then the overall glide with even default PTFE skates, the noise is just reduced to a great extent, and the glide feels fast and what you expect out of glass, but not overly fast. So it's got a nice property in general for its speed. When you pair this with the skates from X-Ray Pad, the grays, I think, are a really nice option for this pad. It gives a little bit of additional control, particularly at end range of motion. With that stopping power, it really pairs very nicely with the Sai pad, and I think is one of the better options and better pairings on the market right now for glass. Again, when you swap to the Obsidian Airs, it just makes the pad, in my opinion, too fast. Listen, if you've got exceptional mouse control, or you're using a very low sensitivity, that's great. I think it might work better for you. But again, I just don't like that the purples make every pad almost feel the same. Again, it turns it into a air hockey table, and I just don't like that. But again, audible noise with these skates, I mean, just so reduced. So X-Ray Pad's done a really nice job in that regard. Paired with the pad, again, just super, super fast. So to me, I think the colors are really something that sets this pad apart from other pads. It's a nice design. The artwork looks fantastic. And overall, it's a very smooth feeling pad, both on the skin as well as the skates. You just don't really feel any texture from that glass. It reminds me of the feeling of, I haven't tried the blue Empress, but it kind of reminds me of the feeling of the purple Empress. But the speed here being, again, it's not on the controlled side. I wouldn't say like it's on the exceptionally super fast side. It's just kind of a more balanced feeling glass when you're comparing all the glass pads together. It's a pad, though, that performs what you expect out of glass. It's a nice pad. Again, only 1,000 of them. It drops on August 1st, so pay attention if you like the design. They're going to go pretty quick if I had to guess. But that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope it helped. If it did, please leave a sub to the channel. See you guys in the next review. Peace.